It's Monday, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media. And folks, don't be fooled by the rest. You're talking to the best. That's right, the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday. Happy August, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful month of July as we're really, the summer months are flying by here in 2026, and I really appreciate you all making this a part of your Monday night viewing from wherever and however you may be doing so. Yeah, folks, 6 years and counting here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. I tell you, irritating a lot of people, but speaking a lot of truth, and that's what matters in today's journalistic climate. And we'll talk about that at length during today's episode. And again, thank you all for tuning in here once again from wherever and however you may be doing so on all your social media platforms, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or X. It takes 5 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, to like, comment, and most importantly, to share our episode today here. It really shows your support for fearless, independent journalism. That's right. That's what you get here with Real Talk via Jersey First TV. It really helps the show grow. And again, folks, it's always about the algorithm. Help us out on the algorithm. Again, show your support for Real Talk via Jersey First TV. And of course, especially on YouTube, please subscribe and you'll be automatically notified of all our great content that we bring you every week here via Jersey First TV. And of course, whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, whether you're driving to or from Tiki Mondays in Point Pleasant, whether you're walking your dog, for some of you parents out there, maybe you're doing some school shopping. Your kids are going back to campus soon, or your kids are going back to school in just a few weeks. I'm sure you have your smartphone with you. Check us out and take Jersey First TV with you anywhere at any time. And folks, I can't say it enough here, leading the way with the leaders in fearless independent media here in the Garden State. It's always Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere every Monday. Of course, check your local listings for start times, and brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with my amazing teammates, Zachary Dora and Tyler Simpson, premiere every Thursday. Again, check out Jersey First TV for start times in your area. Folks, a jam-packed show here today, and you definitely want to stick around for final thoughts. I have a lot to say about the usual bad actors in New Jersey. Take your pick, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in activism, some atrocious elected officials, and especially in journalism, folks. Well, when I think about atrocious journalism, who comes to mind? He's consistent. Yeah, that's right. It's Maxie, the editor-in-chief at Insider NJ, Max Pizarro. And his latest column just shows how disingenuous he is, especially with the news we've learned this week. And more on that during a special comment. But, when it comes to what we've learned about potential voter fraud and everything else, you can always rely on Maxie to deflect at Insider NJ. His latest column is proof of that. We'll talk about it during Final Thoughts later on in the program. You definitely don't want to miss out on that. And folks, yes, during a special comment, well, we've heard the news this week. And as someone who's very proudly unvaccinated, folks, I think we got to learn the truth about Anthony Fauci. And we grew up watching Austin Powers and who we thought Dr. Evil looks like. Well, after this week, I think we really learned what Dr. Evil looks like. More on that later during a special comment. And folks, again, as I say it all the time, 6 years and counting here, being your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's Real Talk here on Jersey First TV. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I like to do quite often is to talk to my peers in the field of media, communications, and journalism. And I like to take jabs at some really bad journalists in the state of New Jersey. And trust me, folks, there's no shortage of them. You saw the collage here. I tell you, when I get to talk to a really good journalist, I kind of get all warm and fuzzy inside, But, don't get it twisted, folks, But I get really happy because I get to talk to a guy who I'm extremely proud of, a fellow Rutgers alumnus, and he is the distinguished editor of New Brunswick Today. Folks, if you have not checked it out lately, please visit newbrunswicktoday.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook. Of course, follow them on Instagram and X, as well as also on YouTube and as well as on LinkedIn. Folks, it's great content from a great local news site. Let's talk to their editor. Their great Charlie Kratovil joins us live right now on Real Talk. Charlie, welcome back, brother. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's good to talk with you, man. And again, let me just preface this by saying, I'll sort of use a pro wrestling term here. I don't like to put a lot of guys over, since a lot of people think I'm an egomaniac on this program or with my media brand. But I got to give people their flowers when it's due. And I just got to say, I've known you for some years now. I've interviewed you throughout the years on different podcasts. on different platforms. And I just can't say enough how proud I am of you, of what you have done with New Brunswick Today, how it first started to where it is right now. And I got to tell you again, and even though New Jersey is a small state geographically, it's a big state. I'm here in North Jersey. You're down in Central Jersey. Yeah, folks, there is such a thing as Central Jersey, so don't get it twisted. But again, you've become such a force in Central Jersey with New Brunswick Today. Take us back in time a little bit, Charlie, when it comes to the origins of New Brunswick Today, the epiphany, and quite frankly, some of the highs and the lows you can share with us here about New Brunswick Today.
Sure, happy to. It's been quite a journey. I, like you, attended Rutgers University, got my degree in journalism, had the good fortune of working with a couple of different nonprofits when I got out of school. And those experiences really gave me the confidence to know that I could start my own news outlet here in New Jersey. I obviously was seeing the changing media landscape and the void that was left behind by a lot of the print publications that used to cover my city. I remember when I first started going to city council meetings, you could reasonably expect there to be multiple reporters in the room and news stories coming out about local issues on almost a daily basis here. But as the years went by, that disappeared. And before I knew it, I found myself as the only reporter in the room at places like city council meeting, and a lot of real important issues being discussed. If you've been to New Brunswick, you see the huge developments that have been, not only discussed, but, realized. We also saw a lot of controversies over police brutality. And, our city is a place where 1/3 of people are living in poverty. So there's a lot of challenges that were being discussed in very serious ways, but not getting the coverage they deserve. So that's why, together with my friend Sean Monahan, we started New Brunswick Today back in 2011 now. So it's been 15 years of doing this work. And you're right. There have been a lot of ups and downs. It's always a struggle to fund these operations and be able to pay our reporters and pay our people. But it is very rewarding. I've gotten to work with over 200 reporters and help them build their skills. And many of them have gone on to make a career of this. And, I'd like to think that everybody got something out of it on not only the content creation side, but, everybody who's read our publication over the years. And one of the big changes over the years has been a shift to video. So, our biggest platform by far now is YouTube. And so a lot of the content we're out there getting and capturing and publishing is video content. When we first started New Brunswick Today, video was really kind of an afterthought and not really part of the core mission. But that's one thing that, we can say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's always going to be change. But the key is, doing accountability journalism, investigative journalism, and, being fearless and not afraid to challenge the powerful.
I mean, Charlie, again, it seems like you've been like that Jedi Master, training young Jedi Knights. And all the time you've been working with a lot of good journalists. Really have to applaud you on that. And again, congratulations on 15 years. Certainly, the years fly by, right? I think, I can't speak for you, but for me, I know the circles have got a little bit darker for me. The hair's a little grayer on the sideburns than it used to be. But again, that's the business, right? And it's interesting, you bring up about the presence of reporters at, local city council and municipal government. Listen, up here in Hudson County, just last year in February of 2025, we saw the closing of the Jersey Journal. And for anyone that isn't familiar with that institution, the Jersey Journal was the print newspaper in Hudson County for over 125 years. Subsequently, like everything else, it just became too expensive to operate. I think there was some, self-inflicted wounds there by some bad management, some bad editors. But regardless, they died out, as did the Hudson Reporter print versions. We've seen the Star Ledger. Essentially, on a Sunday, I used to go grab a coffee and buy the Star Ledger, and it looked like one of my term papers at Rutgers. It was ridiculously thick. And same thing with the Bergen Record nearby. I live up here in Hudson County. And those have disappeared. And now, for example, Jersey City has been in the news cycle for some months now. As you know, you're a political junkie like I am. And, in previous years, when it came to council meetings and budget discussions and, the public having their 3 to 5 minutes to speak during the public portion, you'd see 6, 7, 8, even as many as 10 reporters there reporting on city council meetings, races. And that's not the case. For example, you have my good friend John Hines, fellow Rutgers alumnus with you and I. who does great work with Hudson County View. We've seen Aaron Morrill, the editor of the Jersey City Times. Certainly the tap-intos that are in Hoboken, Jersey City, Bayonne, Hoboken Patch, Hoboken Girl. But I mean, these are local, sort of hyper-local news sites, as opposed to what we grew up on, where we'd pick up the paper physically. I'm still a guy that, I like to pick up the daily news. I'm a sports guy, so I read the sports first and I work my way to the front. But I mean, those days are gone, Charlie. And obviously, down in New Brunswick, Middlesex County, whether it was the Star Ledger or other print newspapers, that is just, it's become extinct. And so when I look at New Brunswick today, it's become such an invaluable source for news, for the community, for residents. What's been the feedback now going on 15 years from residents that tune in online, that see you at council meetings, that see you raising hell about data centers? More on that later. What's been the feedback from people that recognize you and say, oh shit, that's Charlie Kratovil, the editor of New Brunswick Today? What's been the feedback in recent years for you?
Yeah, well, definitely one of the consequences of transitioning to doing more video content is that myself and some of our other reporters are on screen more. So we do get recognized around town. People say, oh, I know you from Facebook, or I know you from YouTube. And, they do very much appreciate the coverage that we do. I think it's a reflection of two things. One is that the void is most severe in local news. So that's, you can find coverage of stuff that's going on at the State House in Trenton. You can probably find more than you could ever read about what's going on in Washington. But when it comes to what's happening in the streets of New Brunswick or in the halls of power at our city or county government, things going on in the courthouse, that's where the void is. That's where there's a lack of coverage. And that's where that's the sort of, changing dynamics of these papers going out of business have really, left behind, a problematic landscape because people don't know what's going on. And the other factor is that local is where it has the biggest impact on you. So I think, when we talk about these issues of police departments or, big development deals going down, these change the landscape for, your daily life. Whereas what's going on in Trenton, Washington may not have the most direct impact. So I think people really crave the local news. And when we lost it, when these other outlets pulled back or went out of business, people really noticed. And so they are really grateful for New Brunswick Today and the coverage we provide. But, I like to think we can do more and we can do better because there's so many stories that we're not able to tell. We do our best to create as much content and focus on the most important issues, but there's still many, many stories that are slipping through the cracks. So we need people's help to tell us about those stories and also to join our team and create the content.
Definitely a job well done. I know something you mentioned before about, again, being present at council meetings and talking about that dreaded D word that it seems to be inflicting all of New Jersey, and that's development. Never mind up here in Hudson County, I walk a block and a half. I see New York City every day, but when I look down the hill and I look at what's called River Road or Port Imperial Boulevard, it's luxury rental building after luxury rental building after luxury rental building. And, I love my days in New Brunswick, living in New Brunswick, going to Rutgers. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, a proud Rutgers College graduate at the undergrad level down in New Brunswick. But, I like going to football games every so often with John Highness or basketball games. And when I, just after the game, I go into New Brunswick and, I don't even recognize George Street anymore. I don't recognize College Ave or Easton Avenue. And I'm like, oh my goodness. When I see, listen, I wish I had some of these dormitories when we were back in the day at Rutgers, like, oh my God, I wish, I remember my days at Silver's Apartments and on the Bush campus and then on College Ave off campus, right on Division Street, my goodness. And I seen these luxury buildings and certainly, more on Rutgers later and the administration there and the leadership there, which I've had some issues with. I know you have as well. But tell us, really, New Brunswick has become almost one of those cities, though, Charlie, like Jersey City, like Newark, like Patterson, that quite frankly used to be a smaller town / city. And now, yes, it's basically centralized. It's a train station there. You have Rutgers, the State University there. Obviously, it's within the Turnpike Parkway. Everything's very centralized and accessible. But, Charlie, my goodness, when I think about New Brunswick, I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd use the word unaffordable to describe the city of New Brunswick, but I think that's where we're at. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have an affordability crisis here. Part of it just stems from the fact that we have so few homeowners, right? We have about 20% of people are homeowners, 80% are renters. So, overwhelmingly, we have folks here who are at the mercy of landlords and whatever rent control laws may or may not apply to their property. And so you have situations where people are here for, super short term. They don't know whether they can afford to stay. If, one rent increase or one, development proposal could, change that for them and force them out. We have seen a lot of development, and like in many places, that development is focused on, the wealthy and serving the corporations. So, sort of the whole New Brunswick redevelopment scheme goes back to, Johnson & Johnson having their worldwide headquarters here and insisting on certain types of changes if they were to stay here and build a new headquarters here, which they did. And they basically had the politicians under their thumb, and they rebuilt the city in the corporate image. And while there's been some good things that have come out of that, overwhelmingly, the gentrification has pushed people out. And it's also created problems and left behind some of our neighborhoods, like the one I live in here on Saddam Street.
Absolutely. Again, it's almost, I barely recognize it, Charlie. Again, after a Rutgers game, going down, maybe one, stop by the Scarlet Pub or Old Queens, and oh my goodness, and I'm walking there, and I'm like, I don't even recognize it. It's unbelievable. Let's get to some stories here that you've been covering, but also too, I want to sort of delve into this with you. I know that not just as an avid journalist and a very good one covering New Brunswick, and of course, I know that New Brunswick Today has branched out into other parts of Middlesex County, nearby Woodbridge, and that's great. Really shows the evolution of New Brunswick Today and the good things you're doing with the site, as well as everyone else that's working there. But another aspect of you that's been in the headlines for some years now is, you've also been a candidate for mayor in the city of New Brunswick. And, we think about, incumbent Democrat mayors in parts of New Jersey that have been there for 10, 20, even 30 years. And quite frankly, the city has not been better off for it. And again, and the reason I use that as in context is, where I live in Union City, my mayor is also my state senator, if you're familiar with Brian Stack. But I mean, it's impossible to debate that Brian Stack doesn't have A, great constituent services, B, he's not accessible, C, he doesn't get to work for the city. I mean, you look at Union City, sure, like any other growing city in New Jersey, yes, we've seen development, we've seen developers come in here, but it still remains really affordable, at least where I live, and for the most part in Union City. But not every mayor is notorious for that. And every mayor has great constituent services, right? Like you can call Brian Stack on his cell phone. He gets back to you within 24 to 48 hours. Like that's not bullshit. That's true. He's accessible. He does public meetings. He does public safety meetings out in the street. And mind you, during the summer months, if you know Brian, like I do, we're very good friends. The guy's in a full suit and tie in July. And the days we've had in July. I can even imagine James Cahill even doing a public safety meeting in his backyard, much less on the city street. But it really shows that, Democrats like James Cahill have had a stranglehold on their municipalities for decades, and the municipality is not better off for it. I know you recently ran in June. You got a really good turnout with percentages, but now you have to explain to us coming up in November why you couldn't run as an independent where in previous years you could. So you could just sort of break that down for us, please.
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting. Varies from state to state. But here in New Jersey, some of our municipalities have a partisan form of government, for better or worse. We have our two-party system. Both of the parties have a primary election to decide who's going to represent them. And I like to say, the only thing worse than the two-party system is the one-party system. And that's what we have here in New Brunswick. The Republicans do not field candidates usually and don't really have any choices in their primary. So what it comes down to is the Democrat who wins the primary and whoever else files a petition to run as an independent. In 2018 and 2022, I chose to be one of those candidates running as an independent and had a great experience doing it. Helped to build a movement and get people excited about change. It's cool because every time you do put yourself out there, all sorts of people come to you and look for leadership, look for guidance. And we've been able to make real progress on issues, but not actually win those elections. As you noted, we've had the mayor for a long time. Mayor Cahill's been here since 1991. And before that, it was his cousin, state senator and mayor John Lynch. So between the two of them, they've controlled City Hall since the 70s. And there's a real feeling of apathy. But thanks to the lawsuit that changed the way the ballots are designed in the primary, now we have actually a more fair system for holding the primary election, where the coattail effect is minimized. And so it's not like I'm running against the entire Democratic establishment with guys like Cory Booker at the top of the ticket and people giving free votes to my opponent because they're part of the same team with that sort of preferential ballot design. But, I put myself out there. We had an office block ballot this time. And so I got to go head to head, just me and Mayor Cahill. And I came up with 44% of the vote. So, I got almost 1,200 votes. The incumbent mayor of 35 years was only able to get 1,500 votes. And while that's really encouraging, unfortunately, that's the end of the road for this election. There's no other candidates running, and I am actually prohibited from running in the general election because of a law passed by my opponent's cousin, former state senator John Lynch, called the sore loser law. And so that law basically says if you ran in the primary, you are disallowed from filing a petition to also run in the general. So I can't keep building that movement. I can't challenge Mayor Cahill once again in the November general election. I had to pick one of those two paths, the primary or the general. And because I lost the primary, that's the end of this election cycle for all of New Brunswick. We have no choices other than the current mayor getting another 4 years, which would, if he finishes that term, would be a 40-year term for him.
That's just wild. Oh, my goodness. Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, please like, comment, and share today's episode with my guest today, the editor and founder of New Brunswick Today, fellow Rutgers alumnus, Charlie Kratovil, joins us here on Real Talk. Charlie, disappointing news to say the least. But I mean, when you're telling me you're getting 44%, I mean, clearly there is a buzz within the city that residents, and again, like, as you mentioned, it might be an evolving city where it might not be the lifers, it might be a lot of transplants, who knows, because of what's going on in New Brunswick. I mean, and even today, what we're seeing is a lot of progressive voters moving into some of these big cities. We see it here in Jersey City nearby, in Hudson County. We've seen it in Newark. We've seen it in Passaic, right? We've seen it in Hoboken. Down in New Brunswick, I mean, obviously, again, I don't want to sort of pick your brain too much about this, but, I think it's fair to say you and me are probably more diametrically opposed on the ideological scale than most people that do podcasts. But again, I can embrace some progressive positions for sure. I'm reasonable. I'm not just a journalist. I'm also a political scientist and academic, so I can have these conversations. But what are you seeing the trends in New Brunswick? Again, you have 44%, and that's great, and I'm happy for you. I certainly believe in the next 4 years you can certainly build on that. But what are you seeing in the form of the electorate in New Brunswick as opposed to previous cycles when you've run?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely, some changing, more progressive energy in the party. That's another reason that I did better and that I chose to run within the Democratic primary. Obviously we've seen, more progressive candidates getting elected now that we don't have that party line ballot system in our primary elections. But, I'm also just seeing that, people in the Democratic Party have seemed to learn lessons, I think, based on the experience with Joe Biden. And the takeaway is that maybe letting people just keep running and running and running until they are done isn't the right move. And that it's now no longer such a great advantage for people like Mayor Cahill to be able to say, I'm the 9-term incumbent. I've been in office 35 years. That used to be an advantageous thing. But I found in the course of campaigning this time around that even people who liked Mayor Cahill were turned off by the idea of him getting a 10th term and staying in power for so long and not letting someone else have a chance. So I think that, probably because of that experience with Joe Biden, pushing forward and running for re-election when he clearly shouldn't have, and that, resulting in, the second Trump presidency. I think a lot of Democrats are rethinking that whole idea of just running people over and over and over again, but thinking that there is some value to actually mixing it up and getting new voices and new people in power, even if they don't have a particular problem with the person in power.
Charlie, let me ask you this, because certainly New Brunswick in Middlesex County, like the other 20 counties, it's seen a bit of a demographic change when it comes to the electorate, voter registrations. More on that later, because that seems to be in the headlines as well. But you identify as a Democrat, you identify as a progressive, right? And I think that, again, as someone who's pretty deeply conservative, I mean, there's some progressive ideas I can embrace, and I'll share those with you in a minute. But we're seeing, obviously, with no county line any longer, we're seeing people, especially Democrats, in counties where we've had entrenched Democrats in House seats, Senate seats, whatever, county commissioner seats, now having a very sort of real chance when it comes to it. Again, the same applies to Republicans in red parts of the state. And what we've seen during the last couple of election cycles, case in point this year, nearby, where I live in the 11th congressional district, we've had a Democratic socialist, kind of get to across the finish line over more established, maybe moderate centrist Democrats near you. Obviously in New Brunswick, I mean, I believe the 12th congressional district is nearby. I think it's in that area. Right. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, obviously a very big field, and certainly Dr. Adam Hamaway got across the finish line. I'm deeply concerned about someone like Hamaway with his ties, some of the rhetoric he's embraced or doesn't seem to, disregard or shoot down. And the bottom line is we've seen, up here in Hudson County, James Solomon overwhelmingly won in a runoff against former Governor Jim McGreevey. All 9 of his council's running mates got across the finish line too because of him. So it's like a 9-0 council in Jersey City, for example. We saw it in Patterson with Mayor Andre Saig. We've seen Ross Baraka in Newark. So, for you, what makes you a progressive? And quite frankly, what differentiates you from sort of the moderate Democrats that are still within the party, are still very vocal, but are concerned, Charlie? Because again, bro, I got to be real with you here, man. I mean, I'm not one of those conservatives that's just going to throw blanket accusations or bombs out there. But, whether you identify as a Democratic socialist or a far progressive, let's maybe meet in the middle. There are some things that concern me about rhetoric and narratives and on policy lines. I don't know in a state like New Jersey if it's plausible. But before we get to that, what makes you identify as a progressive? And quite frankly, what turns you off about the party in general that maybe you don't identify with moderates or centrists?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is the sort of work that got me to here, right? So being a community organizer, being a journalist, provide me with a perspective about the problems that our city faces or that our state faces. And the sort of framework for me is that we need big changes. We need transformative changes, things like making sure everyone has healthcare, right? Not letting people fall through the cracks of that system, making sure everybody has food, making sure everybody has shelter. These seem like basic things, but the current leaders, regardless of party, have failed to make sure everybody has those basic needs met. So my thought is, if you can't meet people's basic needs, get out of the way and let somebody else try. And, that could be me or it could be others. But, I'm not seeing that with the sort of entrenched politicians, the people who've been there, and their attitude is more of maintaining the status quo, as you acknowledge, rhetoric, talking a big game, but not really delivering. And, telling anybody who wants them to move faster or work harder or do better, wait your turn. It's not your turn. I've got the seat now. I'll let you know when I'm done with it. And that's not the way that government's supposed to work. It's not supposed to be a career for people. It's supposed to be an opportunity for you to serve the public. And I feel like a lot of the entrenched interests are more interested in serving themselves or people and organizations close to them, as opposed to serving the general public, including those people who really, really need our help.
No, fair enough. Great points on that for sure. Let's get to some stories here. I know recently, folks, again, if you're just joining us here, please visit NewBrunswickToday.com, exceptional local news site in Middlesex County. Their editor and founder, Charlie Kratovil, joins me here on Real Talk on Jersey First TV. Recent one here about law and public safety. After lying about lockdown, school district sues New Brunswick Today. Tell us about this, because just the headline alone makes it seem like, holy shit, man, Charlie's pissing off a lot of people in New Brunswick here. But tell us the truth about why this story is so significant.
Yeah, this is really blown up into something much bigger than I ever could have imagined. But, it started with a lockdown that occurred at our high school in New Brunswick. we're not immune from security issues and security situations. In this case, there was a 16-year-old who brought a weapon with him to school. It was stopped at the metal detectors, and the weapon was confiscated. The young person was handed over to the police, and the school district could have been transparent about it and pointed out that their security measures worked and it was a successful thing, and we put the school on lockdown for a brief period, but nobody was hurt, and that's why it happened, and just been transparent about it. Instead, the school district lied about what happened. They told parents that their child was involved in a drill that was routine, and that just was not true. So someone leaked the video of what happened that disproved that statement to me, and we published it on our YouTube channel. The school district flipped out and brought a lawsuit against us, and actually got a judge to order us to delete the video from YouTube, and essentially, put a gag order on us that said we can't write about it. That gag order lasted more than a month. Judge Thomas McCloskey ultimately rolled back his decision, but still in a way that does not comport with First Amendment and decades of Supreme Court case law. So we are continuing to challenge the order that he has in place against us. And unfortunately, it's going to cost me time and energy. It's going to cost the school district time and money. And this is a situation where nobody got hurt, and they could have just been truthful about what happened, but instead they lied. And when they got caught lying, they went to extreme measures to try to force a news outlet to suppress the truth. And that's not our style at New Brunswick Today. So we did not acquiesce. We have good attorneys, and we're fighting the case. And, we were finally able to write about it after the judge changed his order. And so that article is available on our website. And it actually got covered in the New York Times and all sorts of places that would have never, ever written about a lockdown at New Brunswick High School, but for the egregious overreach of the board and the judge.
Speaking of about egregious overreach, I mean, that's a term that's been synonymous with New Brunswick in recent years, though, right, Charlie? Not just this incident, but I know that one in recent years where, I mean, you were in the headlines for some time, and I was just like, I remember talking to John Hines and others that I know that know of your existence, and we're like, holy shit, man, I hope Charlie's going to be okay here. I mean, this looks like serious. This looks like there's a vendetta here. Just take us back through time for our audience, maybe that aren't familiar with that situation, because I know that was also in the headlines. It got picked up also on a national level as well.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the situation where they got a search warrant for our newsroom. Back when we had a newsroom on Patterson Street in New Brunswick, we were covering some corruption at the water utility, and someone gave us a piece of evidence, a water meter that had clearly been used, but showed almost no usage. So it was basically a zero reading on the meter. And this was the scam that these longtime officials were doing. They were giving out these special broken water meters to their friends and allies, or perhaps people who compensated them. They could had a nickname for it. It was called the Thief. And the broken water meter we obtained, we featured on our New Brunswick Today show, which is when we were first starting to get more into video. We had a live show, not unlike what you do here. And we didn't have a guest that day, so I brought the water meter on the show as a special guest and explained, the corruption and the how this factored into it. And then, the police went and got a search warrant, came to our office to take the water meter, and they wanted to take even more. Talk about egregious overreach. They wanted to get a copy of the show. They wanted I think they called it a memory card that the show was on. Well, we didn't have a memory card. We didn't keep the shows on a memory card, but ultimately they were, violating the Federal Privacy Protection Act, which is meant to protect newsrooms and our sources. And, for that reason, we should have been given a chance to quash any kind of attempt to gain access. But they went ahead. They got a search warrant from Judge Colleen Flynn, and they came into our space and took that evidence of corruption, which ultimately we were vindicated on because the Attorney General found basically the same exact fact pattern that we had been alleging. And, folks did get sentenced to, time behind bars in that case. And it's the type of thing where, when they were caught, they reacted in a way that seemed like more interested in coming after us than actually getting to the bottom of the corruption we were alleging.
Job well done for sure with that matter. I'm glad you guys are okay over there, because that must have been scary. I mean, just the idea of, it's interesting, folks, for journalists, right, like us, Charlie, that the idea of what government can do and how usurpacious it can be in trying to silence transparency. We've seen it right in recent years, right, with legislation in Trenton, right, about Oprah and everything else. I mean, it's downright scary about whether it's regular citizens or journalists like you or I. They're just trying to obtain some sort of transparency. It's downright scary. On another issue I want to ask you about, because I know it was in the news cycle, again, got a lot of regional attention. I know it was covered, I think, in the Times. I think it was also covered on some of the local sites per se, like, ABC7 and Fox 5 and NBC4 and CBS2, even on Fox News and MSNBC. Data centers have become a big talking point during this election cycle, not just in New Jersey, during the upcoming midterm elections, right? Obviously, all 12 House seats are up for grabs here in New Jersey. 1 U.S. Senate seat is up for grabs. Obviously, nationally, all 435 House seats are up for grabs. Obviously, Senate seats all across the country. But here in New Jersey, data centers have become a considerable talking point. Nearby in Bayonne by me, there's been this discussions and uproar in terms of fighting back against it. At Morris County, all the way down in Cape May County, but down in Middlesex County recently, I know you were leading and spearheading the fight against a data center there. So first of all, for our audience maybe isn't familiar with it, tell us about the dangers of a data center, what the uses are, and quite frankly, what were you rallying against?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of people don't have all the facts on data centers, but, they've existed for a long time. Places like the New York Stock Exchange would need a lot of space to keep all the data that they use to track all the transactions and things like that. So New Jersey has had data centers for those kinds of purposes, sort of lower level basic things. But now with the rise of artificial intelligence and the increase in processing power that is possible, now there is supposedly a demand to build much larger, much more resource intensive data centers, sometimes called hyperscale data centers. And those are the kind that really have tremendous negative impacts on really not just the surrounding area, but the region. One big impact that we can all feel if we pay a power bill is that they cause our rates to increase for electricity because they consume so much of it. They often get a bulk discount from the utilities, and they also often require physical infrastructure investments just to be able to send so much electricity to them. They also require tremendous amounts of water that then create wastewater. Both of those resources are precious and can lead to increased costs for regular people and businesses. But also, if you're close or even sometimes within a mile or so of these things, you can hear them because they have diesel generators and very sort of intense HVAC systems, ventilation systems to cool the equipment. So, for those reasons and many more, these are not a great land use, especially in an urban area, an area where you've got people nearby, where you've got businesses nearby. And so, there was a half-baked plan to build one of these things on Jersey Avenue in New Brunswick. And it's similar to what we were talking about before, so critical that we were in the room. Myself and my colleague, Carlos Ramirez, were there that night in the planning board meeting where they finally revealed what this whole redevelopment plan entailed. And it was quite different than what they had told the city council in the bigger meeting that occurred earlier. But that was the first time we learned of a plan for a data center, and we only had 9 days to stop it. We had 9 days until the city council was set to approve that redevelopment plan. And as you know, once a redevelopment plan is in motion, it can be very, very hard to stop at later stages. So ultimately, we got the whole community organized. I knocked on every door in the surrounding neighborhood. We got a lot of attention online, even before the meeting. Yeah. And then after, the city council created this situation where, they wouldn't let everybody in the building. There were 250 people that tried to show up. They capped it at only about 40 of us were able to get into the building and made everybody else wait outside in the cold and the rain. So it created this viral moment when the people outside City Hall found out that we won inside City Hall. And that video has been seen millions of times. And I had a tweet that was seen millions of times about this. And it really struck at the moment when data centers became a part of the national conversation. And we had so many people reaching out to us, asking, how did you do it in New Brunswick? We've got a problem here in my city, my state. It really did give people a lot of hope, but also, it's kind of started this national discussion about it.
Absolutely. Again, man, great job on that one, because I know it's helped catapult other grassroots activism about the dangers of these data centers. I mean, never mind. Listen, and I have to throw this jab in there. I mean, it's not directed at you, but I mean, yeah, I remember Governor Sherrill was supposed to freeze utility rates on day one, and Democrats in Trenton are supposed to make New Jersey more affordable, right? And
she said she'd do a warehouse moratorium as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I think the Mets have a better chance of winning the World Series than we see that. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But Charlie, another interesting story that covered in New Brunswick today, and maybe I'm showing my age here a little bit here, but growing up on watching the Terminator movies, and John Connor and Sarah Connor warned us about artificial intelligence. Okay, they warned us about Skynet. Okay, I very rarely use ChatGPT or any of the AI because I heeded the warnings of director James Cameron. Okay, but in all seriousness, a good story you had last month that really caught my eye during my notes here. The parking authority in the city of New Brunswick looking to use artificial intelligence. Can you give us an update on that story? And quite frankly, that should scare everybody just by the title alone.
Well, yeah, our parking authority is, a big, target for me, frankly. Like, they are such a big part of the problem with New Brunswick. It's financially, politically, from a transportation perspective. Now to hear that they're considering or moving ahead with using AI to interact with the public and handle their resident permit parking program is even more cause for concern. It's an agency that's been mismanaged. They've had multiple theft scandals over the years. They've also racked up what is right now $180 million in debt. That's down from 390 when I first started pushing for abolishing the parking authority, which is the solution I think we should move towards. But they still have tremendous debt that they need to pay off. And earlier this year, I caught them breaking the law. Their parking enforcement officers were not properly appointed. They were not going through the required fingerprinting. The chief of police was not signing off on them. And really, that means for years, all the tickets they've been giving out have not been legitimate. They are an agency that already has demonstrated that, when being run by humans is less than stellar, and unfortunately has, exploited the community and sucked a lot of money out of people who don't have a lot of money to begin with. It definitely cause for concern if they're going to start using AI tools, taking the human component out of it. I do worry about where that would lead given the past history.
Certainly something to be concerned about. Again, as I said, growing up on Terminator movies, Skynet and everything, I'm just as concerned about AI for sure. Folks, if you just joined us here live, my guest today is New Brunswick Today editor and founder, Charlie Kratovil. Again, please visit newbrunswicktoday.com for the great news site and coverage, everything they do with New Brunswick Today. Again, make sure you like them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram and X, and also check them out on YouTube and also on LinkedIn. Charlie, let me ask you this, because again, as someone that has been doing podcasting for some years, as on different platforms, what's the old adage? Anything worth doing is worth doing for money. And, whether it's the great news operation you do or what I do with podcasting, obviously, listen, if you can make some money on this, why not? And I've been fortunate enough to do that for some years now, trying to monetize this. I'm not even going to get into how hard it is on some platforms like YouTube or other things. Like, for some reason, my traffic is better on Facebook and X and LinkedIn than it is on YouTube. I can't explain it. It's not like there aren't conservative podcasters out there. There's a plethora of them. But regardless, be that as it may, take us through, again, not obviously I don't want you to sort of reveal inner workings, but what have been some of the biggest challenges in recent years when it comes to trying to monetize this? When I have to reach out to companies or municipalities that have contracts with me, sometimes it's laborious, it's exhausting. You're having to sit there and justify your use. And quite frankly, I look at it as I'm an asset people watch me, contrary to what people want to believe, especially those on the left in New Jersey. But I have an audience that's consistent, as do you. What have been some of the biggest challenges in recent years when it comes to funding? Obviously, you want to be able to have a nice staff. It's almost like if you're a sports fan, maybe you'll appreciate this analogy. You kind of want to field a nice roster, right? You want to have some capital to work with and field a good roster and not feel depleted. What have been some of the challenges in recent years for New Brunswick today?
Yeah, so I mean, we've always sort of been funded in three ways. One is just advertisers, sort of the folks you were talking about, getting people to pay to get access to the audience and be able to get their message out there. But overwhelmingly, our support comes from our readers, from people who like what we're doing and donate either monthly or occasionally, and also occasionally grants. So we do apply for and sometimes get grant support. But truth be told, we're a very low budget operation. We do not bring in that much money, and one reason is that that's not why I started it. Right? It was never started as a way to make money. And it's not something that, selling advertising or, like you said, justifying our use to people with money is not my favorite thing to do. So I don't do a ton of it. We do, field incoming requests. If somebody says, hey, I'd like to advertise, we offer them pricing and get them an ad package and usually do seal the deal. But I'm not out there knocking on every pizza parlor and hair salon asking them to chip in $100 so they can get access to our audience. It's just not really worth my time at the end of the day. So we do depend very much on the community that reads or watches our content to chip in and help make more of that content possible. And we are very responsible with the money we do get. So if you do donate to New Brunswick today, you can be sure we're going to get a lot out of that and be working on the most important stories and bringing in more people to do it, and hopefully in a way that will get more money coming in as we get other people to take on those unpleasant tasks that I don't like to do or not good at.
Charlie, again, great job with what you're doing there. And speak about, using money responsibly. And just want to pick your brain about this. As a fellow alumnus, I'm deeply concerned about what's happened to Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey. For some years now, we know that when it comes to the state budget, that's been in the headlines 4 years. Obviously, 8 years of Phil Murphy. We all know that the budget ballooned up bigger than Chris Christie in 8 years. We saw that the budget now under a new governor, a Democrat governor once again, for a third straight term, got bigger once again. But Rutgers in recent years continues to get a lot of funding from Trenton, being subsidized with tax dollars. I'm someone that's worked in higher education before, so I think I can speak on this intelligently when I say that I know full well what happens in the bloated bureaucracy of higher education. Now, I've worked in smaller schools, but certainly, Rutgers, the state university, employs tens of thousands of people. And, one of the biggest concerns I've had, and we've seen it with other colleges and universities in New Jersey, case in point, up here by me in Hudson County, what used to be known as Jersey State College, a great local, teachers-oriented college, liberal arts college, became New Jersey University some years ago. And obviously now with an agreement with Kane University as of July 1st, they became Kane Jersey City. So obviously we've seen bigger universities absorb smaller colleges or smaller universities. We've seen it with Bloomfield College being absorbed by Montclair State University. There's been talks about William Patterson being absorbed into Montclair State. But at the end of the day, Rutgers is the big dog here, obviously next to Princeton, which is an Ivy League private university. But Rutgers continues to get a lot of money, man. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And sometimes you look at whether it's the sports program, what justifies the spending, the hiring of faculty and administrators. Like, again, listen, you might get a little, you might cringe when I say this out loud, but I mean, again, man, we don't need 27 DEI deans at Rutgers. We just don't. We don't need an abundance of different type of administrators when 5 can do instead of 10, and et cetera, et cetera. But how concerned have you been? I know you've covered it somewhat, when we're today, and obviously you see what's going on locally. But how concerned are you about where Rutgers is going? And listen, the cost of in-state tuition continues to go up. It's still, I would argue, the best value for your dollar for a public university. I mean, and this is not just an opinion. This is nationally ranked with U.S. News and World Report. But how concerned are you about recent years at Rutgers, the leadership, the change in leadership, the spending? What concerns you right now, man?
Yeah, well, I guess now we're on my fourth Rutgers president since I, was a student here under Dick McCormick. But yeah, it's definitely an uncertain future for higher ed. We see the costs going up, and I think people would be okay with a lot of state support for a state university if the tuition were affordable. But those tuition numbers are also going up, and they've been going up just about every year. I think there was one year when they held back on the increase that they wanted to do when I was a student. That was under tremendous pressure from the students. These days, that pressure is not there. The costs are going up for people to attend. And yeah, a lot of the money is going into things that maybe aren't the best use of money. Obviously, administrators, I think we agree there could be less administrators. But also the athletics. The athletics is running one of the biggest deficits, I believe the biggest deficit in the country of any Division I school. And, that money's got to come from somewhere. So that is coming from those two pots of money, the tuition payers and the taxpayers. And so it becomes harder and harder to justify the sort of big spending, Big Ten approach when, so many people can't afford the tuition. And, Rutgers was supposed to be that school that, anybody can afford. If you can't afford the private school, you can afford Rutgers. So long as you make the cut, you can get in, just maybe 20, 30 years before I was born, tuition was like in the hundreds of dollars per credit.
Yeah.
Very, very low, very affordable amount. There's no reason it couldn't be like that today. And I think people would be more comfortable with the state putting in money if it was resulting in lower tuition, but we're getting both costs increase. So taxpayers are paying more and tuition payers are paying more. And I think young people today, I'm not a young person anymore, I'm 40, but young people today have a very uncertain future with the rise of AI, with the bad economy situation going on. I think a lot of students are going to be questioning whether college is the right move, even at a school like Rutgers. And that does concern me because college was so important to me. It really was great.
Yeah, same.
Helped set me up for success. But the irony of it is the thing that set me up for the most success was the extracurricular activities, not so much the classroom degree granting institution. It was, stuff like Model United Nations, stuff like 90.3 The Core radio station that I was able to have a show on, stuff like all the student news outlets and other, avenues for me to build my skills and make connections that I still have today. But it's harder and harder to justify the big spend when folks don't know if they're going to have a job coming out of college.
Absolutely, Charlie. And again, listen, I'm as big a sports fan as there is. Love going to Rutgers games. It's one of the better atmospheres over in Piscataway when you go to Jersey Mike's Arena. I call it the Rack. I'm sorry. It's forever the Rack for me. And listen, I still religiously watch Rutgers basketball. I follow it. Probably of all the sports on campus, I follow Rutgers basketball intently and baseball too. And, we're seeing, Greg Schiano, arguably the highest paid state employee, and Rutgers football Rutgers athletics, since joining the Big Ten, I hate to say it, the ROI hasn't been great. Yeah, we had a little bit of a time there in the late 2010s, early 2020s where, they were making the NCAA tournament in men's basketball, also in women's basketball. They were going to prominent bowl games. They were at Yankee Stadium. It's not the case anymore. And it seems like Rutgers athletics is bleeding money. It's almost like, can maybe someone just admit failure and just be like, hey, let's go back to the Big East, or let's go back to one of the smaller conferences and just, take our lickings there where we can be competitive. Again, I say this all the time, for someone that watches Rutgers baseball and basketball, religious, even football too, Charlie, you know this, man. If you're a good quarterback in a good inner city high school or a good shortstop in a suburb in, Somerset, or a hell of a point guard in Jersey City. I mean, yeah, you go to New Brunswick, it's a great campus. Great parties, get to meet a lot of girls, you go nuts. I love those days. I remember them vividly. But, all it takes is one coach to tell your parents, hey, here's a first-class ticket to Clemson, or go to, Ann Arbor in Michigan, or just go across on Route 80 to Penn State. And, you get blown away or enamored with those campuses. It's just like, it's almost impossible for Rutgers to compete with some of these humongous institutions. It just drives me crazy where, maybe instead of bleeding some money and really the athletic department, I think, what was the loss recently? I think I read it in the New Jersey Monitor. I think it was somewhere the 500 million range. it's just egregious. And like, I know there isn't a magic wand to fix this, but if Charlie Kratovil was advising the president of Rutgers, if he was the athletic director, what would you tell the current president?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that, the priority has got to be making it so we can have tuition be affordable. That's going to involve cutting the budget, but also, going to involve making it more affordable. So I think that, the end result has to be that the, best and most popular academic programs are the priority. And, athletics has to run on a balanced budget. It has to, make as much money as it, spends. And that does mean a lifestyle change within that department. But that's where you can make the most savings and pass that on to the students, which I think has to be the priority. Because otherwise, if it just keeps becoming more and more expensive to go to college, we won't have a place in New Jersey other than our community colleges, right? County colleges. But we won't have a state university that regular people can afford to go to. And, the more you push for international students or, out of state students who have to pay higher tuition to kind of, fill the gaps in, the less in-state students you can accept. And you do have to put the state residents first. It's a state university. So sure. I think that means making it affordable for people from all 21 counties. And it's not an easy task. I'm not envious of the new president, but I think, we've got to make big changes, and no president has done that in my time here.
Absolutely. Charlie, before I let you go, just a couple of things here. I want to pick your brain here. I know you have to go shortly, but going back to, again, having been running as a candidate before, and again, you identify as a progressive, you are a Democrat, but I sort of have to pick your brain here. Again, you're very politically in tune about what's going on in New Jersey. But Charlie, let's call balls and strikes fairly here. It's not conservatives like Fernando Uribe that continue to doom the state, right? I mean, it's we've had Republican governors, sure, come and go, but since January 2002, Democrats have held majorities in Trenton in both chambers of the legislature. And in that time, as a homeowner, I've seen my property taxes go up. Now, again, my mayor is also my state senator. He does a good job at keeping them reasonable, but that's not the case statewide. We have the highest property taxes in the country. Now, again, going back to Chris Christie, we can blame him and the legislature too, but the gas tax is the fourth highest in the country, next to New York, California, and Pennsylvania. Supposedly, the gas tax is meant to fund the Transportation Trust Fund, which is supposed to make our roads better. Last time I looked, I subscribed to AAA. We're still in the bottom third of road quality. The tolls on the Turnpike and Parkway continue to go up. The budget continues to go up. And we keep spending money within the budget of subsidizing some of these nonprofits where, I mean, Charlie, we're coddling illegals in New Jersey. We're taking tens of millions of dollars to coddle illegals and other pet projects and other organizations that, quite frankly, I don't sit well with. I'm someone that's very much for parental rights when it comes to our public schools. I work in the public school system now. Seeing what's going on with curriculums in our public schools from a certain community. I mean, again, at the end of the day, Charlie, I mean, as a Democrat, at its core and, embracing certain values, when you look at the dire state that New Jersey is in right now, it's not people like Fernando Uribe you can blame in Trenton, because we don't exist. We're in the minority and we'll be forever in the minority. So quite frankly, how can we fix New Jersey when it's been a one-party system dooming us, brother?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So
sure.
First things first, I'll say that there are systemic problems with the way the state is run, regardless of party. You're correct. It's been controlled by Democrats at the legislative and executive level for, half my life or more. And the, systems that we have in place are systems where tremendous power is vested in a small number of politicians. So like the people who lead the Senate and the Assembly, between those two and the governor, they really have a lock on what we can do as a state. Right. We don't have statewide initiative and referendum. If we go out, we get 1 million signatures. It doesn't matter how many signatures we get. We're not getting a law passed that way at the state level. So we are at the mercy of these three individuals. who, as you noted, are all in the same party. But the key is that they are not truly in charge because they are beholden to the financing, where they're getting the money for their elections, how they're maintaining their majorities by massive spending. The spending almost always comes from vendors who are doing pay to play, right? Whether it's engineering companies, lawyers, folks who are getting really rich.
Yeah, great point.
State and municipal business.
Great point.
They're the ones that are sort of, controlling the people that do get elected. And, it's not a good system, and it's never going to work if that's the system. So I think we do need systemic changes. Whatever way we can break up those things is good. And, just to your point, I think that our government should serve everyone who's here in New Jersey. So that means people who can vote and people who can't vote. That means kids. That means people who are not citizens. And it's okay to support those folks. But at the end of the day, the people who are supposed to be in charge are really compromised by our election systems. And so when they do something to help, it's often for a cynical reason or kind of like a transactional pay-to-play reason instead of helping. And so I do think we're in bad shape at the state level. I wish we had statewide initiative and referendum, because that would be one thing that would shake it up.
Yeah,
but at the current moment, the best thing that's happened in a long time is getting rid of the party line, and we're starting to see some people get to Trenton who are not bought and paid for, who have a little more freedom to be themselves and to fight for what's right. But hopefully both parties will see those kinds of leaders step up and get elected, and that will break apart that system more as we move forward. And hopefully we can make more changes to the election system and the campaign finance system that will empower the people.
Absolutely. And it allows candidates to be able to raise money in a way that makes them competitive, right? Obviously, for both parties in New Jersey, for sure. Last thing here, Charlie, you're a journalist. You've been doing this work for 15 years. I've been in journalism for some years. And like everything else, I think the business evolves. Certainly, as we mentioned at the onset of the program, obviously, we grew up with print newspapers that dominated the news cycle for decades here in New Jersey. That has changed, obviously. The business model has changed dramatically, even for local sites. But, I get a lot of grief, and really from a lot of the liberal left-leaning journalists in New Jersey, what's left of them, that, podcasting with what I do isn't really journalism. Like, opinion journalism is just that. And I always, punch back and say, well, journalism is evolving like any other industry. And I think that when we're not seeing print newspapers anymore, we're seeing news sites. We're also seeing podcasts, like the podcast sphere, whether it's conservative, moderate, liberal, or progressive. I mean, these are institutions. And again, I'm sort of putting myself over here, but the point is, I think that we contribute greatly to the echo chamber of information, maybe not in the way traditionally it was 20, 30 years ago, but I get grief all the time. Uribe, that's not really journalism. He's a podcaster. And I just punch back and I say, the business evolves. We either have to evolve with it or we get left behind. And I think that's always my argument. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think opinion journalism is important. But I also think that credibility is the key, right? As we enter this world where people have got a million different things on their screens and they don't know what to trust, people who do have trusted outlets, who have a track record of speaking truth to power, of sharing information with the public, especially in this local context, right? At the local level, and doing interviews like you're doing now. You're giving me a platform to speak to people that might not have heard of us yet. These conversations are really important. So having podcasts, whatever the format is, whether it's audio or video, it's something that people will watch, will listen to, and they will get to judge for themselves who's credible, who they trust, who they like. And I think that's so important as we see so much fake content or content that exists for a purpose to influence rather than a purpose to inform. I think we need to have more conversations like this where folks who might not agree politically are sharing opinions and are talking through the issues and doing it in front of a big audience. So, I think that podcasts are going to probably be a bigger part of the future, but I try not to predict the future because so much will change. That is for sure.
Charlie, I know that New Brunswick Today has been covering more municipalities. I mean, obviously, Middlesex County is an enormous, county itself. I know you've branched out into Woodbridge. What can we look forward to for the rest of 2026 into 2027? More towns? Is it obviously it's still Brunswick, but is it going to be branching out much more than it has in recent years?
Yeah, thanks for asking. One thing I'm really excited about that we started within the past year is our podcast. So we do have the Jersey Machine is available on our YouTube channel, and we do deep dives into things like a case that we took all the way to the New Jersey Supreme Court, into the insurance crisis, where we're seeing our joint insurance fund that represents many municipalities here in Middlesex County basically going belly up and going out of business. Some of the issues that really do affect us, but we might not know if it's suitable for a deep dive. That's the type of thing we want to look at on the Jersey Machine. And I'm excited. Our next episode is going to be about the New Brunswick Parking Authority. So we're going to get to really have a platform to share out the historical impact of that agency, but also how it affects everybody from an affordability perspective, and of course shine a light on the corruption and how it doesn't have to be that way.
Charlie, I have to say, man, I am so proud of what you and New Brunswick Today has become 15 years in running. Again, we've talked over the years. You've been on different shows of mine, different platforms, but I tell you, I always talk about John Highness and the great things he's doing with Hudson County View and how that's grown in 10 plus years. I put you right there, man, because you know what? Not just because you're an alumnus and I have a little bit of a soft spot for you because you're a great guy, but again, overall, I mean, the work you've done, how it's branched out, how it's grown. I mean, again, I know you're very humble and modest, but again, congratulations to you. Keep up the great work. I appreciate you, having faith in my brand of journalism, right? Some don't. I'm glad you do. I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
Oh, well, just thanks again for including me and thinking about me and encouraging and supporting me. And yeah, I hope that we see those breakthroughs happen at the state level in both of the major parties, because we need people to challenge these established structures in a big way. And that's the only way we're going to be able to truly serve the people of New Jersey. So thanks for having a good discussion today.
Folks, he's Charlie Kratovil, the founder and editor of New Brunswick Today. Please visit the site at newbrunswicktoday.com. Don't forget to like it on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Of course, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell button. And, of course, check it out also on LinkedIn. Great local news, a great local site from a great local guy. He's Charlie Kratovil. Here are my guests on Real Talk. Charlie, enjoy the rest of your summer. Brother, we'll talk again soon here on Jersey First TV.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
Folks, good stuff there with Charlie Kratovil, again, the founder and editor of New Brunswick Today. As I mentioned before, check out newbrunswicktoday.com. Don't forget to like the page on Facebook. Of course, follow New Brunswick Today on Instagram and X. Also, check out Charlie Kratovil on X as well. And in addition, make sure you also check out their YouTube page and also on LinkedIn. Great things going on, ladies and gentlemen, with New Brunswick Today. Another reminder about the importance of local news and hyper-local news when it comes to news sites. As we've talked about on this program, it's great to talk to journalists, credible journalists. When I think about credible journalism, I think of New Brunswick Today, and I think about Charlie Kratovil, its founder and editor here, our guest on Real Talk. Folks, again, we appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing. Happy August to everybody. Still compiling the stats, but I promise you we'll have the numbers next week. Let me tell you, great numbers for traffic here on Real Talk for the month of July. All organic, folks. Nothing boosted. I don't believe in boosters. More on that later. Okay, no paid ads. Everything's organic and transparent and authentic and genuine here on Real Talk, folks. Don't be fooled by little Mickey Mouse journalists out there, a little Mickey Mouse podcast with their Mickey Mouse traffic. Folks, it's real conversations with real guests and real traffic because it's Real Talk. Once again, I want to thank Charlie Kratovil, the founder and editor of New Brunswick Today, for an insightful conversation on everything, not just about New Brunswick, but Jersey politics and more here. So if you just joined us, again, like, comment, and share the episode, folks. It really helps show your support for the program and shows your support for fearless independent journalism, which is what you can always rely on here, Real Talk, via Jersey First TV. Folks, it's time. Again, I say it all the time. 6 years and counting, folks. That's what we're doing on this show. Unlike other journalists, right, who talk a good game, but their numbers don't reflect that. And let's be honest, for a lot of them in the field, and I'll talk more about them later, they've basically been propagandists masquerading as journalists. And some have been in the business 30, 40, 50 years. You think they have some amount of shame at this point, but they don't. More on that. Folks, it's time for final thoughts. And folks, I say it all the time on this program. There's no shortage of bad actors in New Jersey. Whether it's in higher education, for example, beta male and soy boys like Joe Amaditis, right? The associate director of the Center for Cooperative Media over there at Woke State University in Montclair, right? Or other bad faith journalists over the years like Alan Steinberg and the Chuckster, Chuck, Uncle Chucky, Charles Style with the Bergen Record / NorthJersey.com. Or lazy potheads like Matt Friedman with Politico New Jersey. And let's be honest, the New Jersey playbook that nobody reads. Folks, if you're going to read a good newsletter, you read the Morning Monitor with Terrence McDonald, the editor of the Jersey Monitor. Or the Morning Intelligence Briefing with Insider NJ, compiled by the general manager, Peter Nelly. Or the Hudson County View on Mondays with its editor, John Hines. Or downright atrocious elected officials like Joel Brooks in Jersey City. Or the photogenic twins, Uncle Phil with that humongous nose of his. Imagine being stuck in an elevator with Phil Cohen. I would panic just because I think I would pass out from oxygen deprivation. That's just me. Or Sloppy Joe, Joe Quintero, it's summer, so it's happy hour somewhere. Right? Or sanctimonious activists, the usual, like Hetty Rosenstein and Amy Torres, the New Jersey Alliance of Immigrant Justice, or Eddie Morsi with Make the Road New Jersey, or Caleb Burrell here in Hudson County. Other awful elected officials like assemblymen and women, Katie Brennan and Robbie Bala. Horrible activists like Patricia Campos Medina and women like her husband, Bob Medina. The folks I talk about all the time on this program about propagandists who masquerade as journalists, and they've done us serious harm. And more on that later during a special comment. But when we think about bad journalism and bad work ethic and just bad journalism overall, folks, you know what I'm talking about. I say he's consistent, Maxi with Insider NJ. And folks, again, you have to, there's never a shortage of topics with Maxi. And the few times he does do work during the week. I got to tell you, man, it must be nice to have F around money like the Graham family. As they continue to pay Max Brazzaro over $100,000 a year to sit on his ass at home and scratch it, and of course, and make Fred Snowflake right up and down the state covering stories. Again, I'll give Max credit. I think he left his house like twice in the last month and a half to go to State Senator Troy Singleton's office and then meet at a diner with State Senator Linda Greenstein. So shout out to Maxie. Good for you doing some work. But then again, a broken clock is also right twice a day too. But Maxie's latest attempt at journalism obviously is the usual deflection. As you know, with the news cycle here in New Jersey, folks, what we've seen, and we've just even scratched the surface of quite arguably could be serious voter fraud here in New Jersey. Between the Motor Vehicle Commission and what's happened with the Board of Elections. Now, Maxie will try to downplay and say, it's not a big deal. Illegals or non-citizens aren't really voting. Nah, folks, it's a serious, but not just in New Jersey, but around the country. We've seen it. We've seen what the Department of Justice is uncovering. Right? Or in recent weeks when the state budget was being signed, right, and it got even fatter than Chris Christie, and that's saying something because Chris Christie's pretty large. But here's Maxie with another attempt at deflection and covering a story that on face value is important because our veterans are important. But it's just running camouflage. It's not a really serious effort here. As he writes this week, Governor Sherrill establishing a direction by taking care of our veterans. Even the hapless Herbert Hoover once envisioned a chicken in every pot, while the establishment in New Jersey has seemingly long, drearily dreamed of a Trump in every town in a haze of a taxable pot. Again, folks, you can always rely on Max Pizarro. Like the Trump derangement syndrome with Max is unavoidable. Like he can't help himself, even within the first couple of sentences in a paragraph, of invoking the president of the United States. Like Max Pizarro strikes me as the type of idiot that if he goes to his local Stop and Shop or, I don't know, Walmart or Target or a Whole Foods, I guarantee you if the cashier gives Maxie the wrong change after a purchase, I guarantee you, folks, Max Pizarro would blame the president of the United States. That's just the level of Trump derangement syndrome that Max Pizarro exhibits. I mean, it'd be funny if it wasn't so downright embarrassing. Okay? I bet you whenever he leaves his house, which isn't often, but if he decides to go wash his car, I guarantee you if they don't put extra wax lubricant on the tires or don't really, especially if he goes to a hand wash facility, if they don't really scrub down and take every sud of soap off the car, I guarantee you he'll blame Trump. That's Max Pizarro. I guarantee you if he leaves his house, and if he goes to eat with, I don't know who, I can imagine a woman wanting to be near this idiot. But for the sake of argument, if there is a woman that wants to sit across from Max Pizarro with that Prince Valiant haircut that he has, you've seen it, Prince Valiant from Spaceballs. I imagine if he orders dessert and instead of the 3 scoops of ice cream, he gets 2, I guarantee you he'll blame Donald Trump. That's the level of insanity, folks, that's levied by Max Pizarro. Well, let's continue. That's because the Epicurean culture here too frequently insists that garish overlords on the public dime, some of them ancient enough to have been rammed into seats at the Trump Taj Mahal, again, can't help himself, with free tickets to the fights, put themselves first in italicized, while people who actually serve the country, like veterans, can patriotically crawl the back streets amid rats and tin cans. Governor Mikey Sherrill has a difference in our priorities that much of the gold-fringed sludge of the past, joining hands with those who possess the same conviction to help those in need. Ramrod at the microphone in the War Memorial this morning. First of all, I can't even believe he went to the War Memorial. That's pretty interesting. Again, Max Pizarro rarely leaves his house. The Navy veteran in a room with her fellow military veterans, elected officials of both parties, committed to the same cause, and other dignitaries affirmed the mission of, quote, bringing veterans home. Launched in 2024 and led by the Department of Community Affairs Office of Homelessness Prevention, in partnership with the New Jersey Department of Veterans Affairs and others, the initiative aims to end veteran homelessness in the state by connecting veterans experiencing or at-risk homeless with stable housing and support services. Well, folks, I'm not going to read you the rest of this bullshit article, but you get the ticket here. What Max Pizarro won't tell you, and what Max Pizarro should be telling you, is that the money that, again, comes out of the state budget to fund this very important organization should be getting more money by maybe, I don't know, not funding other things in New Jersey, like maybe a legal fund to help illegals. That's what we do. There's a legal fund that's subsidized with our tax dollars to provide legal representation to illegals here in New Jersey that are facing deportation. Because under the wisdom of Phil Murphy, during his 8 years, he decided to classify New Jersey as a sanctuary state. So in layman's terms, what that means is obviously federal law enforcement, vis-a-vis ICE, is prohibited from coming into New Jersey, again, according to sanctuary state laws, and deporting illegals, that's what their job is. Now, again, in the second Trump administration, that doesn't stop the Justice Department or the Department of Homeland Security that oversees immigration customs enforcement from doing that same thing. But we've seen ICE all across New Jersey, and you know what? Good job. You got to get rid of some of these illegals. In many cases, dangerous illegals. But don't expect Max Pizarro to talk about that because, again, he would rather virtue signal how much he hates the president of the United States than care about public safety. He doesn't care. He cares more about pronouns than property taxes. That's who Max Mazzaro is, folks. And unfortunately, the Graham family subsidizes his income by continuing to employ him. And that's embarrassing. It's not downright shameful. But let's continue. All right. And sure, should we fund more programs for veterans? Absolutely. But what Max Mazzaro won't tell you is that we should be doing it by not funding other bullshit programs, like funding nonprofits like the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice or Garden State Equality. As Lauren Albrecht sits there, flipping through her iPad about what to order next on Grubhub or, Uber Eats. Or other nonprofits that get government grants from Trenton. So, Max, if you're really serious about talking about veterans and helping veterans, why don't you write a column that perhaps the state budget shouldn't subsidize these organizations? These left-wing, ultra-partisan organizations that do nothing but coddle illegals or coddle identity hysterics, like the ones over there at Garden State Equality. Because if you're really serious about stand up for veterans, I know I have, then talk about spending our dollars wisely in Trenton. But folks, I promise you, you'll never get that sort of honesty and integrity from Max Mazzaro because he doesn't know what that is. Max Mazzaro would rather play dress up with his Prince Valium haircut, collect $100,000 a year, go to the League of Municipalities, stand in the middle of the Tropicana Hotel inside Cuba Libre, the restaurant, and think he's the center of attention. He isn't. But that's the level of effort and journalism you can get from Max Mazzaro. Because, Max, if you were serious about talking about veterans, sure, you can write about Governor Sherrill's appearance at wanting to support veterans. But if you were really serious about supporting veterans, what you should have included in the column is that, hey, perhaps our tax dollars should go to fund more programs, not fund programs to help illegals or identity hysterics or the left-wing woke bullshit that comes out of Trenton. But again, that will require Max Mazzaro to have what's called, it's a pesky four-syllable word, and we know that Max Mazzaro doesn't have any. Integrity. Has he shown it lately? I mean, I know I take a nap every day. Maybe I tend to oversleep, but has he demonstrated any integrity? I mean, maybe I overslept. I mean, let me know when it's happened, because at least when I've been awake and conscious, it hasn't happened. But again, folks, that's the level of garbage journalism we've come to expect from garbage journalists like Max Mazzaro. And it's a shame because Insider NJ, at least, I'll be fair here, is a reputable news site. And Peter Elliott does a great job as its general manager to try to keep it a reputable news site. When you're employing people like Max Mazzaro and allowing women like Jay Lassiter to publish, I don't know, once every quarter or something, I mean, you continue to either give a stipend or full-time employment to someone like Max Mazzaro, that's not a good use of money. And I wish the Graham family would see through this. And by the way, for the record, no, I'm not lobbying for a job. I worked for Insider NJ years ago. Nice times, nice paycheck. Should have been higher, in my opinion, but that's another conversation. But I'm good over here making money and getting traffic. We're not the same. Max Mazzaro might think he's better, but he's not. The numbers will tell you that. And so is, quite frankly, the level of respect that he's lost in recent years. Well, I gained it. He's lost it. Yeah, we're not the same. It's mediocre over there, and it's greatness over here. Again, two different journalists, two different results. Supposedly our mission should be the same, right? It isn't. And unfortunately, it never will. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment here, and obviously through the news cycle what we've learned, obviously. I grew up loving Austin Powers movies, that great trilogy by Mike Myers, comedian Mike Myers, obviously from Saturday Night Live fame, right? And there are whispers of a fourth Austin Powers movie in the works right now. And for a time in my adult life, I grew up believing what I knew was Dr. Evil and what Dr. Evil looked like. No, folks, what we learned this past week is what Dr. Evil really looks like. And that's in the form of Anthony Fauci. A vile criminal invoking his Fifth Amendment privilege over 100 times in the chambers of the United States Senate, looking at U.S. Senator Rand Paul and others who want some accountability, who want some answers from a guy who was pardoned, which, by the way, why would sleepy Joe Biden have to pardon Anthony Fauci if he did nothing wrong? That makes you wonder, right? But we saw this week, over the weekend, of course, more and more developments that we're learning about Anthony Fauci, the journal that he kept while he was overseeing federal responses to infectious diseases and everything else. Folks, we've learned a lot about Anthony Fauci since COVID. And we've learned that he's a vile, evil man who recommended lockouts, who said, hey, trust the science because you need to trust me. No, folks, what we've learned is not to trust Anthony Fauci. And sure, he came across as sanctimonious, thinking that Senators Rand Paul and others are engaged in a witch hunt. No. It's not a witch hunt, Anthony. It's wanting some answers for horrible policies that you pushed and that, ironically, blue state governors gladly went along with, by keeping our schools closed, and journalists that never once questioned it. Garbage journalists like Tom Moran, who thankfully is out of a job. But during the entire pandemic, you didn't hear a peep from Tom Moran. You heard about his Trump derangement syndrome, like Max Mazzaro. But Tom Moran, at the age of 96, not a peep out of Tom Moran during the pandemic. Sure, yeah, trust the science, trust Anthony Fauci. Conservatives, we're just conspiratorial, right? All we heard was the vilification of people like myself who refuse to be vaccinated. And folks, let me be very honest. Like, I've survived trips to Las Vegas. I've survived trips on spring break during my adult years in college. Trips to Miami, trip to LA, okay? Trips on the shore, trips to DC, okay? Waking up in hotels next to women that maybe I shouldn't have, okay? Whether it's the Lincoln Tunnel Motel on US Route 1 and 9 in North Bergen, New Jersey, or the Belmar Mortal Lodge down the shore in Belmar, or hotels in Miami and Las Vegas and Los Angeles, wherever, folks. And I'm not saying I have Wolverine immunity. I'm not saying I'm invincible, but you know what? If you're relatively healthy and have a healthy lifestyle, then you'll be okay. You never heard rhetoric like that from Tommy Boy. No, Tommy Boy would rather vilify people like yours truly and others. Oh, you're dangerous because you're unvaccinated. You should be shamed. You shouldn't be employed. We should embarrass these people. Folks, these are the individuals, these propagandists masquerading to be journalists who somehow thought they were smarter than you during the pandemic, who never once questioned Anthony Fauci. People like Tom Moran, women like Jay Lassiter. And I get it. I know you recognize, because normally he has something in his mouth. But then again, when doesn't Jay Lassiter have something in his mouth? No, that's a topic for another day. But women like Jay Lassiter were happy to vilify people who aren't vaccinated. And for a guy who's made as many bad choices with his health and his life, you would think he'd have a little more compassion for those that maybe don't want to believe certain members of the scientific community. Women and propagandists like Jay Lassiter happily applauded people like Anthony Fauci. And other propagandists like Charles Style, Chucky, 97-year-old Charles Style. Never once questioning Anthony Fauci or the science, but happy to continue on with Trump derangement syndrome, like Max Mazzaro and Jay Lassiter and Tom Moran and Bob Hennelly and Alan Steinberg. You get the idea, folks, right? Garbage journalists never once questioning school closures and lockdowns. While governors in red states got it right, we learned that governors in blue states got it wrong. Killing businesses and killing people. None of them objected to it. All of them were complicit in it. They were. And if you want to come after me, come after me. But I got the receipts, and I'm ready to throw them at you. And I guarantee you, none of these cowards will do that. But these are the journalists here in New Jersey that never once questioned the science. Uncle Dave, and you would think someone like Uncle Dave, who is explicitly vulnerable to COVID. He's obese. He's 94 years old. You would think like this is a guy who is ripe to be victimized by COVID. And luckily he survived, and good for him. He continues to eat and, work, I don't know, 10 hours a month. If that. But during the pandemic, when he was working at NJPBS and NJ Spotlight News, you never once heard a peep from Uncle Dave. No, nothing. Oh, right-wingers and parental rights groups and Republicans and conservatives, we're evil because we're questioning. No, folks, we're questioning because we have learned that the science that they were peddling was bullshit. And I guarantee you that Uncle Dave, Tom Moran, Jay Lasseter, Max Pizarro, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, you name it, all these left-wing journalists were the same beta males and bitches that were driving around in their cars by themselves with a mask on. I guarantee you they were that type of beta male. And everyone else in this collage would happily ostracize you, sever friendships, in some cases familial relationships, because hey, if you didn't get your 12th booster, and you didn't wear you didn't double mask, and you didn't put plastics up on your backyard or your front porch, folks, this is the level of bullshit we learned about the pandemic, and this is what we learned about Anthony Fauci. And people like this behind me were happy to be complicit. We're happy to peddle the same nonsense that we all know was false. And for someone like me who wasn't vaccinated and is proudly unvaccinated, yes, these are the same people that are happy to say, you know what, people like Fernando Uribe, he should lose his job because he's not vaccinated. We should shame people like him and others. No, folks, we ended up being right, and all of these idiots ended up being wrong. But what else is new? They're wrong on a lot of things. So after watching the hearings this week and knowing what we know about Anthony Fauci over the years, yeah, folks, when the next Austin Powers movie comes out, maybe Mike Myers wants to take a break here. He doesn't have to put on the makeup and put on the suit. He doesn't have to try to pretend to be Dr. Evil. We have a real-life Dr. Evil, and that's Anthony Fauci. And God only knows what we'll learn in the coming weeks ahead. And that's my special comment. Folks, that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank the founder and editor of New Brunswick Today, Charlie Kratovil, for an extremely insightful conversation. Again, I can't say enough how proud I am of Charlie Kratovil and the success of New Brunswick Today. 15 years running strong, folks. Make sure you check him out at newbrunswicktoday.com. Of course, here on the show, folks, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, and most importantly, folks, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, I'm pretty sure you have your phone with you, whether you're going to Tiki Mondays or going to or from down in Point Pleasant. Maybe you're doing some school shopping, food shopping, walking your dog, whatever it is you're doing. I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone with you. Check out Jersey First. Trust me, you'll never be disappointed. Folks, that's what we're doing here every single week, educating and advocating for the residents here in the great state of New Jersey. It's the dream team at Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere every Monday live. Check your local listings for start times, and brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with Zachary Dora and Tyler Simpson premiere every Thursday. Folks, we are the leaders in independent media here in New Jersey. It's always the Jersey First Television Network. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, 6 years strong and counting, it's Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, the generational talent in Garden State Media, and certainly forget about the rest, because you're always looking at the best here. The most handsome face that runs the place. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Once again, happy August. Please party responsibly. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week here. Latest edition of Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Thank you so much for watching, folks. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.